Welcome back, everybody, to me sitting under my bed and talking about something that's not books. Yeah, we're back with talking about the record label stuff because I figured maybe some of you will be interested in that. And today we're talking about something very specific here. That is money. All right, let's go. Cheers. So, before we start, I want to get into like a few of the important details here. Like, as I said, the record label video I did about the vinyls did really well, so I thought a lot of you probably enjoyed that and liked that, and I'm glad for that. And yeah, so I figured I'll do a couple of those in the future as well. And this one, I was debating very hard whether I should make it or not. The reason being, it's money. And the other part is, it's not exactly a happy video because the financial situation of the label and thus of me is not very good right now. We'll go into details for that later on as well. And I don't want this to come across as self-pitying or looking for sympathy or anything like that. But the situation obviously has had an impact on my mental health, and my mental health obviously has an impact on this channel. So when I feel shitty, chances are I won't be making good videos or anything like that, and I figured, so in a way I kinda owe you some explanation, but I didn't want to just make this like, oh, I feel bad, so no videos or whatever kind of thing, especially since I've been trying to get back to some kind of normality there in the last couple of days, as you have probably seen by now. So this is not what it is. I figured I'll just go and show you how much money, or like how the finances of a small underground record label work, at least in my case. Now, obviously, I'm making a lot of stuff the wrong way, and I could totally improve on a lot of things, and I'll talk about some of them, go through ideas that I have, or, you know, and then I'm probably also missing a lot of stuff, so if you have ideas, or want to just tell me how stupid I am, go right ahead. There's a comment section down there, and I'd love to hear your ideas on the subject, on well, all kinds of subjects, really. So that's sort of where we are. Now let's talk about how the finances of a record label kind of work. Alright, and one final caveat here. Not even caveat, it's like, I'll drop some numbers in this video, prices and whatnot, and they are real. Like, that's the point. If I tell you how much it costs me to press or produce a CD or a vinyl, then that's the exact number. Well, sort of exact. I'm gonna round them up, obviously, or round them down to the next, like, I don't know, $10 or something like that. So these are sort of more or less the exact number, so you get like a real picture of how this kind of thing works these days. Alright, so let's look at it. So what does a record label, or in my case, what does my record label, Wrathchild Records, do? Well, I produce CDs and vinyls and sometimes tapes, and then I sell them. And my bands, unless I have like a different deal with them, which has happened with specific bands, usually they'll get 20% of the produced items to sell themselves at gigs and whatnot, which, you know, is one of the usual ways a lot of small-time record labels do these kind of things in at least the rock and metal scene. It's like you give the bands a percentage of produced items. It varies between, I don't know, 5, 10, 15, and 20% of produced items, depending on the label, depending on the band, depending on the situation, all of these kind of things. In my case, it's 20%. Because I try to be fair to bands. Now, obviously, if I say that's 20%, if I do a pressing of 500 CDs or 1,000 CDs, that's either 100 or 200 CDs, and those will obviously be shipped by me to somewhere in the world, depending on where the band lives. So that has to be added into the costs as well, in a way. That's how that works. With like vinyls, where I do 300 copies, it's like 60 vinyls for the band. If they want more afterwards, they buy them at cost, which we spoke about that before, is like, right, I don't know, €1 basically for a CD and €6 for a vinyl record. So yeah, there we go. That's how that kind of thing works. I've done tapes before. I will not go into tapes, however, because they're a special case, and I'll only do that again when it, you know, makes sense. How does it actually that all really work? Well, as I said, I'll do usually 300 vinyls because that's the only thing I can afford with vinyls. I'll do 500 to 1,000 CDs depending on whether I think they'll sell really well or not, because let's face it, that stuff isn't selling, I don't know, thousands of copies. That's not the kind of label I'm in, and there's reasons why that is the case. So let's go from there. So for example, I'll make a CD, and I brought one as an example, which is this one. I'll just hold it up for you real quick. It's Runemaster. The album is called Wanderer. It's a band from Scotland, from Edinburgh. They play epic metal with like a Viking theme, as you could probably guess from, the name and everything. And this one is a CD in a jewel case. Those plastic boxes are called jewel cases. And I'm making 1,000 copies of that, and I did 1,000 copies of this one. Costs around 900 euros, give or take a bit. And then 200 copies of that were sent to Edinburgh for the band to do with as they please, and I hope they have sold them. Obviously, with the plague, there weren't, actual gigs happening and anything, so that's a bit of a shame there. But anyway, and these, as I said, cost 900 and a bit. I think it was 920 euros, something like that, to produce, and I sell them for 10 euros. So if I sell 92 copies, if I sell 100 copies of the CD, I break even. If I sell more, I make some money. I sell them, as I said, for 10 euros because I feel that's a fair price for a CD. I sell them at the moment, and this is one of the things that I need to change in the future. If I find out how, if I find out how, but if I can actually get it done. Right now, I'm mostly selling stuff through Bandcamp. Bandcamp is a wonderful website. If you have not checked it out yet, go check it out. In general, it's, if you want to support small-time labels and small-time record bands and artists in general, it is the best way to do so at the moment, because all the money, except a small cut, goes to the bands, or to the artists. So way better than, say, Spotify or any of these streaming platforms who pay very, very little to small-time artists. However, obviously Bandcamp is more of a general shop thing and does lack a few functions, especially in the social networking department. So that's where I sell the majority of my records. I usually charge, as I said, like $10 for this. It's handled. Payment is handled through PayPal. There's shipping costs. Obviously, I charge as low as possible, which is $4 for international shipping worldwide, and I think $2 for domestic shipping within Germany. Those are more or less the exact shipping costs. Is I think it's €3.80 for worldwide shipping. Plus, obviously I have to put a box around it and everything. So I feel like €4 is as close to me not making any additional money out of it as possible. Same for domestic shipping, where one CD shipping I think costs €1.55. But once again, if you add on that the cost for actual envelopes and stuff, we're kind of getting there. All right, this one actually did really well. That CD did really well. It sold, I feel, now if I think about it, probably 300 copies. Maybe a bit more, maybe a bit less. I haven't counted in a while. So this made me roughly €2,000 of money. Now, that's great, right? I'm rich now. I can do wonderful things with that money, like pay an entire vinyl pressing or stuff like that, or maybe actually eat food from that money. However, obviously, I didn't make those 2,000 extra euros in one go. In fact, what happened there is that for specific reasons, the album was picked up and reviewed, and there was an interview with the band in a German metal magazine, in Death Forever magazine, a couple of months after the release. The release was in June last year, and the interview was published in October last year. So I really actually made most of that money in October and November of 2020, and not in July or August when I had to pay for the shipping, for the pressing. What happens with CDs is I pay by invoice after delivery. I have 2 weeks after delivery to pay the product, which is much easier for me to do than, say, with vinyl, where I have to pay upfront before they even start producing. So still, I had to have those €1,000 in July, and then I started breaking even a couple of months later. And this is once again why I charge €10 for a CD and not just €1, even though €1 is what they cost in production. It's like, I want to have a reasonable time frame to break even. Now, have all my CD pressings broken even? No, they haven't, of course not. There's a bunch of them that have made very, very, very little money indeed. For reasons that are very difficult to understand oftentimes. Like running a record label, I feel, especially when it comes to younger bands or less well-known bands, is very much like throwing stuff out there and hoping one of them will actually make a lot of money, because you can't never really judge. There's one record that I did last year that I'm very, very proud of. And I thought it would do really well. I even paid we even hired a promotion agency for that one, and it got a ton of really great reviews, some interviews on like all kinds of websites all over the place, and it sold like shit. It hasn't broken even by now. It may be sold, I don't know, we did CDs and vinyls, it may be sold like 40 CDs if I'm lucky, and it probably sold somewhere around 30 vinyls as well. And I add that together and you see how much money I lost on that whole project there, which sucks. Anyway, the other part is like where else I sell CDs is I sell them wholesale to mail orders and record shops that want to carry these CDs. I could go and actually have a distribution company that will make sure that my CDs or my records releases are available, potentially available in all kinds of record stores all over the place. I don't think that's something I should do right now, because the kind of bands I'm releasing, they will not sell in record shops and large supermarkets and what have you that sell records these days. These are still very much specialized things that people kind of already know that they want, or will stumble across when they're browsing a specialty mail order or web shop that sells underground heavy metal. So I don't really need a distributor right now. Obviously, for large companies, for large labels with large names, that makes a hell of a lot more sense to go with a distributor. I know Soul Food would be one for Europe, at least for Germany, that would be a good choice for like smaller underground labels. But I'd need to look into if I can afford that shit at some point. So right now I sell wholesale, which is I sell them for 50% off. If people buy around 10 copies of the same record, I'll go down to a bit more off. So usually I sell the CDs for €5 and vinyls for €10 these days. If someone would go and buy, like, I don't know, 30 CDs of one title in one go, I'll definitely go lower than €5, but that's so far never happened. Because, once again, sales numbers are not always that high in the underground. Selling 300 CDs is pretty fucking good. Selling 500, even better. Selling 1,000 copies. Selling 1,000 copies in 1 week will get you pretty high up into the German record, album charts these days. Just so you have an understanding of like what kind of numbers we're talking about in general here. So that's how the CD part works. With vinyl it works a bit different because, as I said, there I'll have to pay up front. But then it's the same thing. I charge like €20. So if I sell 100 copies, I'll break even once again. Selling 100 vinyls also has the advantage of, freeing up a lot of space, because that stuff takes up a lot of place. Space in my apartment, because obviously I don't have large storage facilities. I can't afford them. I store that stuff in our living room, and in my room, and in my flatmate's bedroom, and in the cellar, and in the kitchen, wherever there's room to, pile boxes of CDs and vinyls. So yeah, that's a cost that I don't really have, because it's more like personal discomfort that I pay in and not in money. Alright, so where were we? CDs, €1,000, roughly. Sell them for €10. If they are Diggy Packs, which is the paper things that I have, one here, which is the Rygar album, recently released. It's great epic metal from Texas and really fun. If you're into like sword and sorcery stories, things like that, then this one is certainly one for you. Diggy Packs are a bit more expensive in production, which is why I sell them for €12 instead. Like making 500 copies of a Diggy Pack with a big booklet and everything will cost more like €1,200. So once again, I'll charge them in a way that selling 100 copies will bring me like a break even. And that's how that works. Once again, with Diggy Packs, I have to pay after delivery, so that's pretty fair for me to do. So I can, like, also production times for CDs are much shorter. Like pressing a CD takes about a week to 12 to 2 weeks, somewhere between a week and 2 weeks. With a dual caser, the Diggy Packs take a bit more time, and so I don't know. I send off the order to my pressing plant, and then I set up pre-orders, and ideally by the time the stuff arrives, I've already made a bit of money from that stuff to pay the pressing. That's how that works with CDs. With vinyls, as I said, you pay upfront, €1,800. You send them the files, and then you wait for half a year at this point for the stuff to show up. Now, you can obviously start pre-orders by the point you send the money or whatever, but with waiting times for records being as long as they are right now, you will have to guess for a release date, and well then, if that release date passes, you'll have to deal with a lot of angry customers, which is a huge drag on time and sanity. And they're obviously justified to be pissed off if their records don't show up. But I still have to tell them, because there's nothing I can do, and there's more or less nothing that the pressing plant can do either. So that's a lot of like additional costs that go into this beyond the money. All right, so we kind of have a general picture right now. What additional costs does having a record label actually incur? Well, there's a bit of that as well. One of them is obviously advertising. Now, advertising, you can either, buy ads in print magazines or banners at web magazines and whatnot. You obviously also want your stuff to be reviewed in all kinds of places. You could upload the album on a YouTube channel like the New Wave of True Heavy Metal Full Albums channel, which is what I usually do, because Anderson is really a cool guy and has a huge audience there. So having an album uploaded there to an audience of 100,000 people will potentially generate some sales. You can also hire a promotion agency, something that I have done a bunch of times. There's reasons for that. Now, I can potentially, and I have, collected a lot of emails of magazines and whatnot over the times. And I can send them my stuff. But there's so much stuff being released these days that it's very difficult to gain anyone's attention unless your name is already, like, well known. Well, by which I mean, if a label of the size of Nuclear Blast sends you an email like, please review this album, chances are you'll do that. If, however, Rough Records sends you an email and you're like, who the fuck is Rough Records? And you put it on the pile of the other 500 records that promos that came in this month. And yes, I'm not joking when I say 500. There's chance, like, obviously I've written reviews for a while for a magazine in Germany, and we get somewhere around between 50 and 100 downloads per week of stuff that we are asked to review. No one has that time. With print magazines, you also don't have the space to put all of that in. So what you do is you hire a well-known PR agency that probably has more recognition and can get you some more reviews in magazines. And that's still important, especially print magazines. Some of them have a very devoted following that will buy stuff because it's mentioned in that magazine. Web magazines, online magazines have lost a lot of draw in the last couple of years. As I said, that album of a band called Eisenhower that I released last year got a ton of reviews. And all of them good, like 8 to 10 points, and a bunch of interviews, and they still sold like nothing because no one reads that stuff on the internet anymore. People stream and then buy, or go and buy something because someone they liked, or someone who is basically an influencer at that point, but you can't really call them influencers because we in the heavy metal scene are very conservative and would never stoop to believing an influencer. And then we just buy something because people that we respect on the internet for some reason say, please buy this album, go buy this album, it's great. But that part is very difficult to steer, because you can't really go to these kind of people because they're not your average like influencer that does sponsoring deals. At least we're not yet at that point. It's very much really about who you know and who you can get the album, and then hope that if they like it, they'll tell everyone about it. So that's very difficult to do. So that's how advertising works these days. The other part obviously was, or is, and will hopefully be back, talking to people in person. Whether it's on like all kinds of websites, or more ideally at concerts, festivals and whatnot. You can be there, have your stuff, talk to people, explain why they really, really need that specific record and so forth. And that's something that didn't happen for 2 years. Now you can imagine what kind of impact that had on sales in general, what kind of impact it had especially on small underground labels like mine. It's not a good one. I can tell you that one. So yeah, that's how sales work there. As I said, like wholesale to other distributors, or direct sales on Bandcamp. And yeah, ideally, I would also have a dedicated web store somewhere. It's something that I have looked into and I really need to get working on. Problem is, I can't do that myself because I can't do a layout, for obvious reasons. So I need to find someone who can do that for me at an affordable rate, because I can't afford like a really good designer or web designer. I can't do that. I don't have the money for it. Because when we come to a web store, we come to something that is very important in the underground, which is trading. Because I have 20 releases by now. And if you don't want to buy all of those 20 releases, you might just go to a shop that has both that one release from Rothschild Records that you want, plus also like 2 releases from Wholesale Sales music that you really want, and one from No Remorse Records, and one from Dying Victims, and all these other small-time record labels. And then you buy all of them together and only pay shipping once, and it's way more comfortable for you. Now, obviously, we all know that. And this is a sneaky bit, right? The sneaky bit is that you don't think about it when you start your label. You're like, yeah, I'll just sell my records. And then you realize, no, what you do is you take, 50 of your CDs and you send them to Wholesale Sales Records in Italy, and they'll send you 50 copies of their releases. And then you sell their stuff, and they sell your stuff. And in the end, hopefully, both of you sell more, because it's easier for potential customers to find all the stuff they're currently looking for in one place. But for that, I obviously need a web store that is out there and not part of Bandcamp, where I can't do that. Which is one of the reasons why I really need to get the website business set up in a proper way. And just as soon as I find an affordable web designer who can do all of that, I'll get all of that done. That's one of the things where I said that I really need to do changes, and I'm aware of them. Because I need to sell more stuff to make more money, to just pay for upcoming projects. All right, so where else do I get money? Let's talk about what is really causing me a lot of pain right now, and that is loans. Well, it's pretty simple. Twice now I have used a PayPal small business loan, which was really neat. It's built on the money that PayPal gets, like on your cash flow through your PayPal account, and then they decide how much money they want to loan you, and then they take a percentage of that from your PayPal income directly into paying back that loan. It's perfect, really. It worked wonders for me, because I could take out a loan of $2,000, use that money to pay for a vinyl pressing, and then all the pre-order money went directly into paying back my loan. And I did that in March, I think. And it worked wonders. I was even able to pay all the thing back in May, which, wonderful again. Yeah. And I took out another one for the next vinyl pressings. And I paid that one back as well. And then I wanted to take out a new one, because I paid back the last loan a couple of days ago, and then PayPal said that my business is no longer eligible for one. Which sucks, because I right now need to pay for an upcoming vinyl pressing. And I rarely have, 2,000 euros lying around somewhere. I was kind of counting on that loan, which, you should never do, but it's very easy to fall into that trap. And they're like, yeah, well, it'll work again. It worked the last 2 times, plus sales have been really good the last couple of months, so why shouldn't they give me money again? Well, they don't explain that shit, so I don't know. I can guess one of the reasons could be that I changed PayPal payouts from individual payouts to monthly payouts in the meantime, so my cash flow looks different. It could be something else. Who the fuck knows? Now, obviously, if I would have an external web store that sells more stuff, it's also linked to PayPal, maybe also with individual payouts in that case, my cash flow would look different again, and I would probably get back the chance to do PayPal loans and solve that problem again. Right now, I don't have that, so what I did is obviously I went and took even more money out of my savings account, where I ideally have money saved up for when I get old and poor. Yeah, that's what I did. That's what I did now to pay for the next vinyl pressing. And as you can see, that's the kind of thing that really, really takes a toll on my mental health, because I need to figure that shit out. I need to make stuff work in, I need to make the label work in a way where it is at least financing itself. Ideally, it would pay me, I don't know, a couple of $100 per month. I would be happy with that. I don't need that much money from it. But paying money in and having your money come back maybe a couple of months later is a system that's is not very sustainable for someone like me. So that's where I am at right now with the situation. I'll be able to pay everything for the next couple of weeks, for the next couple of months really, but then I need to figure out something else. Right. So now you know how much money you can actually make with a record label. The answer is very little, but you can pay a lot into it. It also shows that I'm really not good at all this stuff because, as I said, it has taken me forever to actually get a website set up. And reasons for that are my mental health and my inability to ask for help, which, sucks. But that's a topic for a different day, when I feel like actually complaining to all of you about my mental health states and all of that stuff is a good idea, which I guess is never a good idea. But we'll see if that is something that I feel comfortable talking about in the future. All right, I hope you actually took something away from that, because now you kind of know how much money I don't make. And yeah, I'll talk to you about books tomorrow, and that will hopefully be way more fun, because I got more Orb Scepter Throne for you, and then I have like some sci-fi, because there's an important sci-fi book coming out at the end of the week, which is Termination Shock by Neil Stephenson, and I'm a huge Neil Stephenson fan, so we'll have that. Until then, I don't know, go buy some records. Doesn't have to be my records. Go help a band, help an artist, help a record label. We all really need that money, and supporting people that create art is something that's always helpful. That's what I do. Anyway, have a great Sunday, and I'll talk to you soon. Cheers.